Forget about the romantic legends of free Indians galloping across the prairies under a starry sky. Forget about wise elders, heroic hunters, and shamanic rituals. The real life of a Native American tanner is endless stench, dirt under your nails, cracked hands, and the slow, agonizing burnout of the soul. This is not a path to respect or glory, but a daily struggle for survival on the edge. There is no room for hope here. Even death is just another unnoticed loss. But before you get comfortable, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. And now, get comfortable. We're starting. You wake up with the morning light stinging your eyes, the smoky air scratching your throat, and the unyielding weight of another day pressing on your chest. There are no chirping birds here, no idyllic scenes of noble savagery or romanticized dances around the fire. Instead, there is only the relentless stink of animal skins, the sour tang of sweat, and the cloying, inescapable reek of rot. You are a tanner. You will never be anything else. Nobody ever asks if you wanted this life, if you ever dreamed of doing anything different. As a child, you might have watched the hunters with their painted faces and shimmering arrowheads, admired the warriors, or even envied the women who gathered berries and told stories at dusk. But here you are, grown now, and this life has claimed you whole. You live it because you must, because someone must, and you were never the lucky one. You start each day by peeling yourself from your sleeping mat, bones creaking, skin covered with a thin layer of grime that never really goes away. If you are lucky, your joints are stiff, but not screaming, your hands only cracked and not bleeding yet. If you are unlucky, you will find the same old wounds open again, red and weeping from yesterday's labor. Either way, there is no time to linger. The skins will not wait, and neither will your family's hunger. The world you inhabit is neither kind nor forgiving. The smell of death permeates every corner of your home, clinging to your clothes, your hair, even your dreams. There is no escape, not in sleep, not in laughter, not in the arms of another. When you close your eyes at night, you still smell it. When you eat, the taste of leather and old flesh invades every bite. Your hands are always raw, and you have long since forgotten the feeling of soft skin or clean fingernails. You rise before the sun has properly broken the horizon. The air is cold and thick, still full of night's shadows, but the fire outside is already sputtering in the pit, sending up tendrils of greasy smoke that drift into your nostrils. You cough once, twice, and spit out the taste of yesterday. Another day, you think. Another skin. Another week. Another year. You step outside into the camp, and nobody greets you. Why would they? You are not a hunter, not a storyteller, not even a healer. You are just the one who deals with what nobody else wants to touch. Your work starts with the dead. Today, like every day, the hunters have brought you their spoils. A deer, maybe two, sometimes a bison if you are lucky, and the spirits have not cursed you with hunger. The carcass is heavy, still warm, the eyes half open, staring at nothing. You know better than to feel anything for it. Pity is for those who do not have to scrape the meat from the bone, who do not have to turn death into something useful. Your hands are already aching, but you take up your knife anyway. The first cut is always the worst. The way the skin resists, then yields, the fat oozing up beneath your fingers, slippery and cold. You feel the warmth leaching away as you work, stripping the hide from muscle, working the blade between sinew and flesh. There is no dignity in this task, no great artistry or spiritual reward. Only the grind, the endless grind, and the knowledge that tomorrow it will start all over again. As you work, you hear the sounds of life around you, the crack of laughter from the young ones at play, the low hum of voices trading news, the rhythm of feet moving to an old, tired song. None of it matters. You are not part of it. You are part of something else, something that stinks and bleeds and never gets sung about at feasts. Your children, if you have them, are still asleep, dreaming of other things, but they will wake soon enough and come to your side. They will see the blood, the mess, the stink, and know, as you knew, that this is their future too. It is written on your hands, in your eyes, in the cracks at the corners of your mouth. There are moments, small and rare, when you remember that there are other ways to live. When the sun slips between the clouds just right, or when the wind carries the smell of pine and grass instead of rot, you let yourself feel the memory, but you never let it grow. Dreams are dangerous things. They only make the day harder. You finish with the skins just as the sun begins to climb. Your stomach grumbles, but you ignore it. There will be food eventually, if the skins do not go bad, if the work is done right, if nobody gets sick. That is too many ifs for a morning, but you have learned not to complain. Complaints only echo back to you in the empty space where hope should be. So you move on. You drag the hides to the water, to the fire, to the stones. You do what you have done every day for as long as you can remember. You do it because you must. You do it because you are a tanner, and there is no way back. You do not possess an impressive set of polished tools handed down through generations, wrapped in soft leather, gleaming with the pride of ancestors. No, your tools are a miserable collection of what life has grudgingly allowed you to keep. There are no stores, no well stocked sheds. There is only what you can salvage, shape, and sharpen yourself, or what you might trade for at great cost. Each piece is a tiny battle won against time, hunger, and decay. The mainstay of your toolkit is a knife that was once sharp, once new, perhaps before your father's father ever touched it. Its handle, darkened by years of blood and sweat, is cracked and notched, threatening to break with every pass along a hide. You run your thumb along the edge and find more nicks than smooth steel. Sometimes you try to sharpen it against a stone, but stones are never as smooth as you need, and the knife is never as sharp as you wish. Next comes the scraper, if you can call it that. It might have started life as a rib bone or a fragment of antler, now whittled down to a crude blade. It is awkward in your hand, unforgiving to your fingers. The edge dulls almost instantly on tough flesh, and when it slips, it leaves angry red welts across your skin. Some days you wish it would snap for good, but it is stubborn, like you. You both last far longer than you should. You have a handful of stones, each carefully selected, not for beauty, but for their ability to grind, pound, or crush. One is heavy and flat, ideal for smashing tendons and breaking bones. Another is smoother, rounded from endless hours of rubbing against hide, meant to soften what will otherwise stiffen and crack. There is a stick, peeled of bark and splintered from use, that serves as both lever and club. None of these tools is special. Each is heavy, awkward, and a constant reminder of how little you have. Nothing about your work is precise. You are not a craftsman working with fine instruments. You are a prisoner armed with barely more than rocks and bones, fighting the endless assault of sinew and hair and filth. You have watched the way your tools wither with every day, shrinking from use and abuse, always needing repair, never truly whole. When you are forced to trade with your neighbors, you discover that they too are scraping by, sometimes literally. You might give up precious strips of finished hide for a better bone scraper or a sharper knife, knowing full well that in a season or two it will be just as battered as your old one. There is a silent economy of suffering. Everyone knows the value of a knife that does not wobble or a stone that is not yet cracked in two. The smell of the tools is as bad as the work. No matter how many times you scrub them in the creek, fat and blood and old rot cling to them. Every tool is marked by the ghosts of 100 animals, 1,000 days of misery, a mountain of lost time. The knife is sticky, the scraper is tacky, the stones have gone from gray to a permanent greasy brown. You notice as you age that your hands become tools as well. The skin on your palms grows as thick as old hide, calloused and split, always rough, always dirty. Your fingernails are ragged, rimmed in black, torn from digging into stubborn flesh. Your fingers themselves warp, bowing around the shapes of the stones and bones you grip each day. You bleed and heal and bleed again. A cycle as predictable as sunrise. There is never enough of anything. You do not have enough sharpness, enough strength, enough hours. You dream sometimes of having a knife that slides through skin like water, or a scraper that never catches, never blisters. But dreaming is a kind of madness, and you cannot afford it. Every day you do what you can with what you have, and every day what you have is less than the day before. When the wind howls and the night is long, you sometimes sit with your tools beside the dying fire, inspecting the edges, rubbing away stubborn bits of flesh, trying to coax another day of use from them. You know the truth. These things will betray you one day. The knife will shatter, the scraper will snap, the stones will crumble, and you will be left with nothing but your aching hands. But until that day, you will keep scraping, cutting, grinding, and bleeding, because that is what a tanner does. That is all you have. By now, you have learned that there is no elegant way to peel a hide from flesh, no gentle method, no sacred dance that makes the job less revolting. Every time the hunters haul in their kill, your heart drops a little lower in your chest. Whether it is a deer, a bison, or, if luck is truly bad, a half rotten animal dragged out of a bog, the process is always the same. Nobody ever sings songs for you. The only chorus here is the sound of flesh tearing and the dull thud of knives against bone. The animal stares at you with lifeless eyes. Maybe once you whispered apologies to the spirit of the creature, like the elders taught. But after years of this, you stopped talking to ghosts. You need to move fast, faster than rot, faster than flies, faster than the warm body can cool into something worse than death. There is no room for hesitation. The hide has value only if it is fresh. Wait too long and the skin slips from the flesh in soggy chunks, good for nothing except feeding the dogs. Your hands know the motions without thinking. The knife, never sharp enough, slides under the skin at the legs first. You cut around the ankles, the tail, the ears. The air is thick with the smell of blood and musk, and something bitter, the unique stench of something just dead. The first few cuts are always the hardest, not because they require skill, but because they remind you how thin the line is between life and whatever this is. Sometimes you wonder how long before your own skin grows cold and useless. The next part is worse. You grip the edge of the skin, sticky and wet, and begin to pull, using the knife to free it from the meat. Your hands slip, your arms ache, and sweat runs down your brow, mingling with the animal's fluids. Fat clings to your fingers, slick as oil. Sometimes the hide rips, and you curse, a low, guttural sound that the others pretend not to hear. Every tear, every slip, every botched cut is a failure, a waste, and your work must be twice as hard to salvage anything useful. You remember vaguely stories about spirits cursing those who do not show respect to the dead. You wonder if that is why your work is always this hard, why the hides fight you every step of the way, why every day brings new blisters, new cuts, new bruises, but there is no time to beg for mercy. The sun moves too quickly, and if you pause, the flesh turns stiff, the skin hardens, and you are left with another piece of useless trash to haul away. Once the hide is off, you shake it, letting scraps of meat and clots of blood splatter onto your legs and feet. There is no point in trying to stay clean. Every inch of you is already soaked in filth. Flies gather instantly, a black, buzzing cloud that dives into your eyes, nose, mouth. You spit, blink, and keep working. Now comes the ugly work of scraping off what meat and fat still cling to the underside. The dull scraper is your only friend here, though it is more foe than anything. You press, push, drag, grunt, and curse your luck, your hands, your tools, the animal, the spirits, the sky itself. The fat is stubborn, white and greasy, refusing to yield to your efforts. The blade catches, slips, skids, and sometimes gouges right through the hide, ruining hours of labor in an instant. Every failure is a personal insult, and you take it with the resignation of one who has long since stopped believing in fairness. Time slips by. The sun rises higher, baking the blood to your skin, pulling moisture from the hide, drawing out an even sharper stink. If you are not careful, the hide dries out before you finish, turning leathery and tough, impossible to work. If you rush, you risk leaving too much flesh, which will rot and ruin the whole thing anyway. There is no winning, only degrees of losing. If the day is particularly hot, or flies particularly fierce, you might be forced to skin and scrape faster than you should, risking disaster with every stroke. Sometimes another tanner wanders by and offers a suggestion, a joke, or a complaint. Their advice is as worthless as their sympathy, but you pretend to listen, if only for a moment's distraction from your own misery. At the end of it all, what do you have? A hide that might be salvageable if you are lucky. Fingers raw and swollen, arms trembling, face streaked with sweat and blood that is not always your own. You haul the skin away, dreading the next step because you know it will be worse. Every job you do is a reminder that tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, you will be here again with another dead thing, another hide, another opportunity for failure. You do not fear curses from the spirits. The real curse is waking up every morning and knowing this is your life. Skinning, scraping, suffering, repeating, until your own skin is finally useless and someone else takes up the knife. You drag the heap of hides to the edge of the camp, past the places where anyone respectable might live or work. Nobody wants this stench too close, not even other outcasts. You pass the refuse heap, where bones rot and dogs fight over scraps, until you reach the pit, a shallow depression where foul water gathers, thick with last season's sludge. It is not really water anymore. It is a witch's brew of mud, blood, ashes, bits of old skin, hair, fat, and, when times are desperate enough, urine from the whole camp. It is said the spirits would not step near this place, and who could blame them? Neither would you, if you had a choice. But you do not. The hides must be soaked, or all your agony has been for nothing. You grab a skin, slick, heavy, half frozen in the early morning, and plunge it into the filth. The cold bites your fingers, but you hold it down, forcing every fold and wrinkle to absorb the foulness. The stench rises like a physical thing, clinging to your hair, your teeth, your soul. Even after all these years, your stomach lurches every time. You can taste it, a mix of rot and chemicals, like some ancient warning against ever becoming a tanner. There is no escape. Your hands sink into the muck, searching for the next hide, the next piece of work. Sometimes your fingers brush against something soft, and you realize, with dull resignation, that it is a bit of last month's skin that never left the pit, now melting into shapeless horror. Sometimes it is not even animal. You do not ask questions. You do not have the luxury of fear. You knead and twist the hides in the slurry, making sure every part is saturated. You must do this for each one, over and over, until your nails turn black and the skin on your hands blisters and peels. The soaking softens the hair roots and loosens the last stubborn bits of flesh. If you do it wrong, the hides will rot or stiffen, and all your labor will feed only the worms. If you do it right, you only have to endure the smell, the chill, the crawling sensation of things moving just below the surface. You never do it right, not perfectly. There is always a patch that slips, a spot that does not soak, a moment when your concentration falters and you think of something other than this endless cycle of filth. The pit has a way of claiming what you forget, reminding you that the only thing worse than doing this job is doing it badly. When you finally stand, your arms ache, your back is numb, and your legs are streaked with filth. You stagger away, shaking off the worst of the sludge, though it is pointless. You smell so bad even the flies abandon you for fresher meat. The other camp members wrinkle their noses as you pass, though some pretend not to notice. Nobody envies you. Nobody wishes to trade places, even for a day. You remember when you first started, how your skin would burn for days after the soaking, how you wept silently at night from the pain. Now, your nerves are dulled, but the damage is deep. The skin on your fingers splits and bleeds with every change of weather. You have long since given up trying to keep your hands clean. Nothing grows beneath your nails except rot. It is as if the pit is slowly swallowing you too, hide by hide, piece by piece. Sometimes, late at night, you hear the old ones whisper about the power of the soaking pit, about the curse that falls on those who work it too long. You do not believe in curses, not really, but you have seen tanners whose hands never stop trembling, whose teeth fall out, whose eyes lose their color and shine. You see your own reflection in the water, warped, grim, ancient, and you wonder how much of you the pit will take before it is done. The soaking is never finished. As soon as you empty the pit of today's hides, someone brings more. You curse them in your heart, but you curse yourself more. It is your work, your prison, your never ending ritual. The pit is always hungry, and you are always the one to feed it. Sometimes the wind changes and blows the stench across the camp. Children cry out and cover their faces. Women mutter and move away. Dogs slink off, tails between their legs. You just keep working. There is no pride here, no reward, only the knowledge that tomorrow will be the same or worse. You finish soaking the last hide and turn away, arms leaden, shoulders hunched, stomach churning. You wonder if the smell will ever leave you. It will not. You are marked now, inside and out. The only thing that changes is how much of yourself you leave behind, soaking in that endless, stinking curse. There is no dawn bright enough to make this work feel less than a sentence. You begin with your hands already stinging from yesterday's blisters, your wrists stiff, and your knuckles swollen. If you were lucky enough to get a few hours of dreamless sleep, it is gone now, chased away by the memory of the day's next ordeal, scraping the hides clean. You used to think there would be a day when this would become routine, something you could do with your eyes closed and your mind far away, but that was a lie. Every morning brings a new personal hell. You squat on the cold ground, the soaked hide laid out before you like a map of old wounds. Its surface is a battlefield, bits of clinging fat, sinew, and hair, all needing to be removed before the skin dries out and turns hard as stone. The smell is already rising, sharper now, a metallic tang mixed with last night's rot. You grip your scraper, bone, stone, sometimes nothing more than a broken bit of antler, and start pushing it across the slick surface. The noise is sickening. It is a wet, sucking sound that makes your teeth itch, punctuated by the occasional slap of gristle flying off to land somewhere on your bare feet. You quickly stop caring about the mess. The dogs are your only audience, sitting just out of reach, waiting for scraps to come flying their way. Sometimes you envy them. No need to worry about spoiled hides, only hunger and patience. You learn to hate the hide itself. It fights you with every stroke. Some patches yield, the scraper sliding over them with deceptive ease, while others resist, refusing to give up their secrets. You press harder, feeling the jolt travel from your wrists to your shoulders and neck. Every so often, your scraper slips, and you slam your knuckles into the raw, wet surface. Pain flares, but you just suck in your breath and keep going. There is no time for coddling wounds. You have dozens of hides to do, and every hour lost is another step closer to disaster. Your hands take on the permanent ache of those who have stopped pretending there is any relief. The joints swell, the skin splits, and blood mixes with the filth on the hide. You stop wiping it away. Your blood is no cleaner than anything else here. Sometimes you see the old tanners working with hands twisted and gnarled by years of this, and you know your future without needing a seer to tell you. The work is monotonous and endless. You scrape and scrape, thinking the hide will never be clean, that you will be here until nightfall or until your arms give out, whichever comes first. In these hours, your mind drifts only to be yanked back by the sudden, sharp pain of a blister opening or a tendon twinging in protest. You grit your teeth and keep working, telling yourself lies. Just one more hide, just one more patch, just one more hour. You stopped believing those lies long ago, but you repeat them anyway, a thin shield against despair. As the sun rises higher, the stench grows. Sweat pours down your face and chest, sticky and salty, mingling with the muck. Flies gather in thick clouds, drawn to the rawness, the promise of a meal. They bite your skin, crawl into your ears, settle on every exposed bit of flesh. You are too tired to shoo them away. You accept them as part of the job, tiny tormentors whose only ambition is to live another day. You scrape until your arms burn and your vision swims. You scrape through hunger, thirst, heat, and cold. You scrape while others laugh and eat and rest. You scrape until you do not remember when you last felt clean or whole. Sometimes, late in the day, you finish a hide and hold it up to the light, searching for missed spots. There are always more than you expect. You sigh, start again, cursing softly under your breath. When at last you finish, you stretch out your hands, trying to flex stiff fingers and look at the battered pile of scraped skins. The victory is hollow. Tomorrow or the day after, you will be back here, bent over another heap, with nothing to show for your suffering but a handful of skins and another layer of scars. There is no praise, no thanks, no respite. You rise, bones cracking, muscles screaming, and gather the hides. The dogs follow, snapping at the bits left on the ground. You stagger away from the place where you spent the day, already dreading the next. The punishment is endless, the work without mercy or meaning, but you have learned not to expect anything else. You are a tanner, and this is your life. You would think that after so much scraping and cursing, the worst is over. You would be wrong, of course. The job of a tanner is a ladder, and every rung is greasier, filthier, and more dangerous than the last. Now you face the part that other people only hear about in nightmares, the lie soak. There are many recipes for disaster, but this one is the same every time: ash, water, and anything else that burns your skin to the bone. You start by gathering the leavings from last night's fires, ashes as cold and gray as your own hope. The right wood is never around, so you settle for whatever burns. Your hands sift through the remains, blackening your fingernails and leaving behind streaks you know will not wash out. You drag heavy buckets to the pit, dump the ashes in, and pour in water, stirring it all with a stick so battered and rotten it resembles a bone pulled from an old grave. If your luck is truly sour, someone brings a jug of stale urine to help the process. You pour that in too. There is a science to misery, and the lie bath is both laboratory and punishment. The smell, which you once thought could not possibly get worse, proves you wrong again. It is a stench sharp enough to make your eyes water, raw enough to carve holes in your memory, heavy enough to coat your mouth and throat. Even the dogs will not come near. You put on your bravest, blankest face and begin dunking the hides into this cauldron of doom. The liquid is caustic, cold at first, but it bites deep, making your hands sting and your arms tingle. Sometimes you try to keep your sleeves down, but nothing helps. Before long, the lye seeps in and your skin bubbles up in tiny, burning blisters. You use a stick to stir the hides, careful not to let them clump together or stick to the bottom, where the mixture is thickest and most vile. The goal is to strip away every last stubborn bit of hair and fat, but the lie wants more. It wants your fingerprints, the calluses on your palms, the last dregs of moisture in your skin. You work quickly, but never quick enough. After only a few minutes, you feel the tips of your fingers go numb, then raw, then hot, as if you have dipped them in the sun. Every so often, a hide needs extra persuasion. You haul it out and lay it on a rock, scraping away loosened hair and skin, then back into the lie with a hiss and splash. Sometimes you hear your own skin hissing as well. The line between tanner and hide blurs. Who is soaking whom? You have lost count of how many times your wounds have opened in the lye bath, how many times the mixture has found its way into a fresh cut, searing your nerves until you want to howl. But you do not howl. You just keep going, staring into the pit as if it will one day blink back. Your arms itch, your knuckles split, your nails turn white and peel away from the quick. There is no ointment for this, no salve, no grandmother's secret cure. You dip your hands in the cold stream afterward and watch the skin float away like ash. Some tanners go blind from splashes in the eyes. Some lose the feeling in their hands forever. You count yourself lucky if your wounds merely fester and your joints merely ache. Luck is a relative thing, measured in degrees of pain. All the while, time stretches and contracts, warping itself around your misery. The lie is never just right, too strong, and it eats the hide along with your skin. Too weak, and the hair clings on for dear life, forcing you to start over. Every batch is a gamble, and every mistake is paid in blood, sweat, and layers of ruined skin. When the last hide comes out, limp and pale, you rinse it in the river, scrubbing with cold hands that barely remember what comfort feels like. You try to ignore the way your fingers tremble and the way your skin screams at the touch of water. You think about quitting, but the thought passes as quickly as it comes. What would you do instead? This is not a job you do for love or pride. You do it because you have no choice. The lie does not care, and neither does anyone else. By the time the sun sets, you are only half yourself, half skin, half memory, all exhaustion. Your hands are red and raw, your eyes swollen from smoke and chemical bite, your mind numb and distant. You have survived another day at the edge of chemistry's cruel festival. Tomorrow will bring more hides, more ash, more pain. You have learned that the lie bath is not only for hides. It strips you too, layer by layer, until only the bones and stubbornness are left. That and the stench, always the stench. Some say it will never leave you, even when you are gone. The day is not even halfway through, and already you feel the old misery gnawing at your bones, the particular ache that comes from not having enough of anything, not ever. As you stagger away from the lie pit, your hands pulsing and your eyes watering, the reality of your meager supplies greets you like a slap. The world, you suspect, is always running out, and nobody notices except those at the bottom. You glance at your food stores, such as they are, A few shriveled roots, a bag of cracked maize, maybe a scrap of dried meat, if you have been lucky or clever in your trading. You calculate, again, for the 100th time this season, how long you can make it last. You know the answer already. Not long enough. It is never enough. You might beg a handful of berries from a passing child, or gnaw on bones long since picked clean, but there is never a real meal, never the full feeling of a satisfied belly. Your stomach is an empty drum, forever echoing. You check the woodpile, hoping for enough to keep the fires burning through the next round of hide work. There is always less than you need. The good branches are already gone, snatched up by families with children or warriors with influence. What remains is damp, rotten, or riddled with insects. You make do, piling up whatever will burn, even if it means choking on bitter smoke when you light it. You promise yourself to search farther afield tomorrow, knowing that tomorrow you will be just as tired, just as pressed for time, just as desperate. Water is a constant worry. You need it for soaking, for boiling, for washing hands that will never truly be clean. But the stream is sometimes little more than a trickle, and the pools near the camp fill with muck, leeches, and the offal of 100 previous jobs. You try not to think about what you might be drinking or what soaks into the hides. Your body learns to endure the taste of rot, the feel of grit between your teeth. Some days you fantasize about rivers that run clear and fast, water you can cup in your hands and drink without fear. But you know those rivers are always somewhere else. The hides themselves, your only real wealth, are just as unreliable. Some weeks the hunters return with nothing. Other days, an animal is so mangy or diseased that even the dogs shy away from it. You patch together what you can, scraping thin scraps into thicker ones, stitching holes, making ugly, usable things out of what everyone else would throw away. Your best work is invisible. Nobody praises the tanner for keeping the camp shod or clothed, but everyone curses your name if a pair of moccasins falls apart, if a water pouch leaks, if a new hide smells too much like death. Your shelter is nothing to boast about either. You have no fine lodge or sturdy home, only a lean-to patched with odds and ends, stitched together from whatever you could scavenge. The roof leaks, the wind whistles through the gaps, and when it storms, you pray to a dozen gods that the whole thing will not collapse on your head. Your dreams are always the same, dry, warm, safe, and you wake to the sound of rain and the cold certainty that they will never come true. Clothes are a collection of rags and patches, a history of every failed hide and every desperate barter. You have long since stopped caring what you look like. Vanity is for people with softer jobs and softer hands. You wear whatever you have, as long as it holds together, as long as it covers the worst of the sores and bruises. Even then, you are marked as a tanner, unmistakable in the grime, the stink, the scars. Tools, too, are always in short supply. The knife is duller than ever. The scraper is chipped. The stones for pounding and smoothing are worn thin. polished not by pride, but by necessity. Every so often you lose something important: a good stick, a rare awl, a needle made from bird bone, and you search for days, cursing your luck and your clumsiness. Sometimes you have to trade away precious scraps of finished leather for a tool you desperately need, knowing it will not last, that nothing ever does. Everywhere you look, something is missing: enough food, enough warmth, enough rest, enough hope. You live on the edge of scarcity, and scarcity is a cruel companion. It sharpens your hunger and blunts your kindness. You feel yourself hardening year by year, like the hides you work, becoming less human and more artifact, worn down, patched up, made for use and not for beauty. You remember, distantly, what it was like to have dreams that were not just about survival. You remember laughter that was not bitter, conversations that were not complaints, sleep that was not just a way to escape hunger for a few hours. But those memories are thin and slippery, like the last shreds of a spoiled hide. In the end, the only thing you have enough of is work, work that fills the day, the night, the spaces between your thoughts, work that leaves you so tired you do not have the strength to wish for more. You go back to your scraping, your patching, your endless thankless labor because that is all there is and all there ever will be. You would think, after all the scraping, soaking, and stinking, that there would be a moment when you could sit back, breathe, and let nature do the work. People who have never touched a hide imagine drying as a peaceful, sun dappled process, like laundry billowing in a gentle breeze. They are wrong. Drying hides is not restful. It is a war, a long, slow, losing war against everything the world can throw at you. First, you drag the wet, limp skins from the pit, your arms trembling, your back aching. The weight is different now, heavier with water, but somehow lighter with all the flesh and filth scraped away. The hides slap against your legs, dripping a foul mix that soaks into your already filthy clothes and runs between your toes. You try not to think about it, but the dogs follow, noses pressed to the ground, tails twitching, hopeful for one last morsel. You keep an eye on them. They have been known to make off with a half dry skin if you turn away for even a moment. You stretch each hide on a rack or, more likely, lash it between two trees with whatever you have: twine, sinew, strips of failed leather. Sometimes you use wooden stakes hammered into the ground with a rock, or fashion pegs out of broken branches. Nothing matches, nothing fits. The hides sag and twist, curling at the edges, pulling themselves out of shape. You do your best, but the hides never dry the same way twice. Then you wait, but you do not rest. The waiting is an illusion. Every few minutes you must check the skins, pull them taut again, turn them to keep the sun from baking them hard as rawhide. If the weather is too cold, the hides stiffen before they dry, cracking like old parchment. If it is too hot, they shrink unevenly, turning to brittle sheets that crumble at a touch. If it rains, Well, if it rains, you start all over, cursing the sky, the spirits, and your own bad luck. The air is never right. A stiff wind dries one side, but leaves the other slimy and wet. Dampness creeps in from the ground, soaking the bottoms. Sun scorches the tops. You watch clouds roll in and wonder if the gods are laughing. Sometimes you imagine you hear them, their laughter echoing in every gust that rips a hide from its moorings, or every crow that lands to peck a ragged hole through your day's labor. Birds are a plague all their own. Crows and ravens descend as soon as your back is turned, jabbing and tugging, leaving holes that you will have to patch later if you can. Children wander by and poke the hides with sticks, giggling at the way the skins stretch and quiver. You snap at them, but they run off, returning as soon as you look away. Dogs circle, tails wagging, waiting for your attention to falter. Sometimes, in your exhaustion, you lose a skin to their stealth and find only scraps left in the dirt. Even when the weather is good and you manage to keep the scavengers away, the process is slow and unforgiving. The hides must dry evenly, or they will warp and twist into useless shapes. You massage and pull at the leather, working out knots and bumps, your hands red and swollen, your fingers numb. If a hide dries too fast, it turns stiff and useless. If it stays wet too long, it rots from the inside out. There is no perfect balance, only endless adjustment and constant disappointment. Night brings its own troubles. Dew settles on the hides, undoing hours of work. Sometimes you have to haul everything inside, cramming damp skins into your shelter, filling the air with a fresh wave of stink. You try to sleep, but the smell clings to your lungs, and you wake up choking, your dreams filled with visions of mold and ruin. If a hide survives the drying, it is by luck more than skill. You scrape away the crust that forms on the surface, rub it with stones or your own aching hands, coaxing it into something soft enough to use. Even then, the leather is never perfect. There are always hard spots, thin patches, places where a bird's beak or a child's stick tore straight through. And always, always, the threat of loss, one bad night, one careless moment, and days of labor are ruined. You feel it deep in your bones, the knowledge that you live one mistake away from disaster. There is no room for pride, only vigilance and the nagging certainty that you are fighting a battle you can never truly win. When you finally have a pile of finished hides, you do not celebrate. You do not sing songs or give thanks. You just move on to the next job, the next skin, the next round of scraping, soaking, drying, and cursing. Your hands are cracked, your back bent, your spirit worn thin as the raggedest hide. This is the life you live. This is drying, a tedious, dirty, endless struggle against a world that never gives you a break. You would think, after the ordeal of drying, that the worst is behind you. But, as always, you would be wrong. Now comes the stage that puts the final touch, the stage everyone seems to think is magical, almost ceremonial. It is nothing of the sort. Smoking hides is a process as dirty, dangerous, and disappointing as every other step you have endured. In fact, it might be the step that finally breaks what is left of your patience, your back, or your sanity. First, you gather the materials. You need wood, good wood if you are lucky, but more often you scavenge whatever is left: rotting logs, broken branches, even damp brush that does not want to burn. You need bark too, and sometimes dried dung or moss, anything that will smolder and smoke but not burst into flame. You drag it all to your smoking pit, or more likely, to a hastily dug hole or a battered old fire ring that has seen too many failed attempts at keeping the smoke where it belongs. You build your fire carefully, nursing it along, coaxing a reluctant smolder from the scraps you have assembled. There is a trick to it, everyone says. You have not found it yet. Sometimes the fire burns too hot, drying the hide to a crisp. Sometimes it will not catch at all, and you spend an hour blowing into the ashes until you are dizzy, coughing, and lightheaded. Your eyes stream tears, part smoke, part rage, part exhaustion. Once you have a good smolder going, you stretch the hides above or around the pit. You hang them from sticks or racks, trying to keep the edges from touching the flames. The smoke is supposed to creep through every pore, every fiber, turning the raw skin into something tough, flexible, and, most importantly, resistant to the rot that haunts your dreams. If you do it right, the hide will last a season or more, resisting mold, damp, and all the other ways nature tries to undo your work. If you do it wrong, the hide becomes brittle, scorched, or worst of all, smells like a burned out camp, and nothing more. The smoke is your constant companion, curling into your hair, coating your tongue, stinging your eyes until you cannot see. It clings to your skin and your clothes, turning everything you own the color of old ashes. It gets into your lungs, making you cough until your ribs ache. You tell yourself this is for the greater good, that smoke is the final shield between your work and utter ruin, but most days you would trade anything for a single fresh breath. Sometimes you work the hides by hand as they smoke, kneading and stretching them to keep them supple. Your fingers, already raw from scraping and soaking, now blister and swell from the heat. You watch for hot spots, patches, where the hide dries too fast or too slow. You never catch them all. There are always places that crack or stiffen, always new disappointments to replace the old. The smoke is not only a torment to you, the whole camp suffers with you. Children cry when the wind shifts, sending bitter clouds of haze through the lodges. Neighbors grumble, coughing and muttering about how you always seem to pick the wrong day. Warriors complain that their clothes reek, their weapons stick, their food tastes like the wrong end of a bonfire. You ignore them as best you can, though sometimes you dream of taking your whole pile of hides and feeding them, one by one, into the fire just to be free of it all. Then there are the days when nothing goes right at all. The wind changes suddenly, blowing sparks into your hides, and you watch in horror as your work catches fire, going up in greasy, foul smelling flames. Or a downpour comes, smothering your fire, soaking everything, and turning your half finished hides into sodden, useless messes. Or a dog, child, or even a jealous rival tanner sabotages your setup, knocking down racks or stealing precious scraps of wood. Every disaster is possible, and sooner or later, every disaster will happen. After hours of choking, sweating, and fighting with your own impatience, the process finally ends. You judge the hides, poking and prodding, sniffing and feeling for flexibility. Most are passable, some even decent. A few are ruined, and you set them aside for tasks nobody wants. You roll up the finished hides, knowing that the smoke will never really leave them. Or you, for days, weeks, even years, everything you own will carry the smell of old fire and burned wood. You will carry it in your hair, your clothes, your breath. You will take it with you into the afterlife, if such a thing exists. By the time you stagger away from the smoking pit, your eyes are red, your throat is raw, and your hands are blistered anew. You are tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. You know that soon enough, someone will come demanding a new pair of moccasins, a pouch, a coat, something made from these smoked hides, something better, softer, stronger than before. And if it fails, they will not blame the wind or the wood or the spirits. They will blame you. But for now, you are done. The smoke drifts away, and you, more ghost than person, follow after. There is tired, and then there is the kind of exhaustion that crawls into your marrow and makes a home there. You stopped thinking of yourself as merely tired years ago. Now you wake already weary, limbs heavy as old stones, eyelids grainy with dust and smoke. Every morning is another round in the same grim contest between your aching body and the demands of work that never ends. Your hands are the worst. The skin splits around your knuckles, raw and red, bleeding whenever you close your fingers. Calluses build up and peel away, revealing tender new flesh that blisters and cracks in the same day. Your wrists throb with every motion, scraping, pulling, tying, pounding, always in circles. At night, your hands ache so badly you keep them pressed to your chest, like a child clutching a wounded bird, but it does no good. The pain simply sits with you, waiting for morning. Your arms burn with a slow, dull fire. Every time you heft another sodden hide or bend to scrub out another patch of stubborn fat, your muscles remind you that rest is for other people, hunters, warriors, those who spend their days in motion, not bent double over stinking leather. Your shoulders are stiff, your neck locked into a permanent knot. Sometimes, after a particularly long day, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a puddle or a patch of polished bone and do not recognize the hunched, misshapen figure staring back. Your back. Oh, your back. It is a knot of old injuries and new insults, every vertebrae counting the hours since you last lay down. You stoop as you work, hunching over the hides for hours, sometimes days, and every evening you stand up slower and straighter, as if some invisible hand is pulling you back toward the ground. You have seen the older tanners, their spines bent into painful question marks, moving through life like wounded animals. You know your own future is written in those shapes. Your feet are no better. You stand for hours on ground that is never soft. Mud, gravel, roots, frozen dirt. The cold creeps up through your soles until your toes go numb, then start to burn, then fade back to numb again. In summer, the ground grows hot and hard, baking your feet until they blister and split. You lose toenails, sometimes whole chunks of skin, and you walk with a limp that never truly goes away. You do not remember the last time your body was not marked by some kind of pain. A scrape here, a burn there, a gash from a knife that slipped, a bruise from hauling a rack of hides. You stop noticing new wounds. They blend in with the old. You sleep poorly, waking every hour to shift and stretch and curse the pain that will not let you rest. When you finally do dream, you dream of work, scraping, boiling, hauling, cursing. There is no escape, not even in sleep. You try to eat enough to give yourself strength, but there is never enough food, and what there is has to be chewed with teeth that ache and crack, jaw muscles that spasm and pop. Your stomach knots up with hunger and worry and the bitter taste of smoke and lie. Your eyes burn from the constant sting of smoke and wind and dirt. Your throat is always dry, your nose always full of the sickly sweetness of rot. People think you are used to the pain, as if it becomes easier. It does not. You simply get better at ignoring it, at pushing it aside for a few hours so you can finish your work. But it waits for you. It always waits. Some days it feels like a second shadow, following you wherever you go. Other days, it is a storm inside your skin, roaring and insistent. And then there is the fatigue that comes not just from the body, but from the mind. The endless repetition, the thankless labor, the knowledge that nothing you do will ever be enough. The bitterness builds up like soot in your chest, weighing you down, making every task harder. There is no pride in this exhaustion, only the certainty that it will last for as long as you do. When the day ends, you do not collapse so much as fold yourself into the smallest, least painful shape you can manage. You stare into the darkness, listening to the creaks and groans of your own body, and wait for morning when it all begins again. There is no reprieve, no relief, no healing, just another day, another hide, another round of endless fatigue and pain. You might imagine that the life of a tanner is so miserable and isolated that nobody notices you at all, but you would be wrong. In a world of scarcity, everyone has their eyes on everyone else, especially when it comes to the things they need and the things they envy. Your neighbors know who you are, what you do, and most importantly, how well or badly you do it. They watch your hands and your hides with a kind of hungry suspicion, always waiting for an opportunity to judge or complain. Sometimes, if you are unlucky enough to produce a hide that is softer than usual or free of the usual stink, you become an object of jealousy. How did you get it so smooth? Someone will ask, half accusing, half desperate. If you answer with anything other than the truth, that it was pure luck and more misery than it was worth, they will not believe you. They will say you are hiding some secret technique, keeping the best for yourself, cheating the rest of the camp. On the other hand, when you fail, and you will fail, because the work is never perfect, they are just as quick to notice. If a moccasin comes apart at the seam, if a water pouch leaks, if a strap breaks, it is your name that is muttered in the smoke of the evening fire. Lazy tanner, they say, useless hands, cursed hands. Sometimes you want to shout back, to show them the cuts on your palms, the raw skin, the hours spent bent over soaking pits and smoky fires, but you do not. No one cares about the excuses of a tanner. All they see is the result, and if it fails, you are the only one to blame. Arguments are common. Some are open and loud. A hunter shouts at you because the quiver you made did not last through the hunt. A woman scolds you because the soft pouch for her baby's herbs turned stiff and useless. Sometimes the fights are quieter, a cold shoulder, a look that lingers too long, a comment just loud enough for you to hear, but quiet enough that you cannot answer. You get used to these small hostilities. They become another layer of your daily uniform, along with the dirt and the pain. Trading is never fair. When your hides are in demand, everyone wants them for less than they are worth. They offer you the worst food, the last pick of firewood, a promise to help next time, promises that are never kept. When your work is judged poor, nobody will trade at all, and you find yourself bartering away your own tools, your own patched clothes, just to get through another day. There is no charity for tanners. You are useful only as long as your hands hold out. You are not alone in your suffering, of course. The other tanners in the camp are rivals as much as they are comrades. Sometimes you exchange grim jokes or bits of advice, but always with one eye on what the other is doing. If someone else's hides are better, you must hear about it from every direction. Why can you not make yours as soft as hers? Why is your smoke so bitter, your leather so tough? You want to say it is all the same, just different shades of failure, but nobody is listening. Sometimes you catch someone trying to steal a half dried hide or sabotage your smoking pit. They will deny it, swear they were just passing by, but you both know the truth. There are no real friends in this line of work, only desperate people competing for scraps. You grow hard, suspicious. You count your hides twice, sleep with one eye open, and hide your best tools where only you can find them. The worst are the whispers about curses. If you are too unlucky, if your hides spoil, your tools break, your children fall ill, someone will say you have angered the spirits or brought a curse upon the camp. At first, you laugh it off, but after a while, The whispers feel like stones in your pocket, heavy and impossible to ignore. You start to wonder if they are right, if you are the reason everything seems to go wrong. The suspicion grows, and with it, the isolation. It is a peculiar kind of loneliness, surrounded by people, but always set apart, always the one to blame when the world is cruel. You have no one to confide in, no one to trust. Even when the camp comes together for feasts or ceremonies, you find yourself at the edge of the circle, the smoke of your own fire curling between you and everyone else. The only constant companion is the work, the endless, thankless, backbreaking work. Your neighbors may envy you, curse you, or ignore you, but they always need you. And so you keep scraping, stretching, smoking, and patching, knowing that the only time they will miss you is when you are gone and there is no one left to blame. If you ever believed that misery earns you freedom, that working harder means owing less, you were wrong. As a tanner, no matter how much you endure, you are never truly your own. Your suffering is not a badge of independence, but a chain binding you to the needs, demands, and tempers of everyone else in the camp. No matter how you ache, how raw your hands or empty your belly, someone always needs something, and more often than not, they need it from you. The warriors come first. Without good leather, there are no bowstrings, no shield covers, no moccasins tough enough to run through briars and snow. They speak to you as if you are invisible, as if the bowstring grows on a tree and the shoes appear on their feet by magic. They bring you snapped straps, broken thongs, ruined quivers, and expect them mended before the next dawn. If a warrior's bowstring snaps in the hunt, it is your fault. If his shield fails in a fight, you are to blame. And Waspadiet, when the job is done, he takes it without a word, walking away while you rub your swollen wrists and stare at your dwindling scraps. The hunters follow. Their demands are quieter, but no less pressing. A water pouch bursts halfway through a chase, and suddenly the world is ending. They need carrying straps, new bags, soft skins for wrapping meat. When they return with a kill, they expect you to drop everything and turn the hide, however mangled, bloody, or torn, into something useful quickly, quietly, and perfectly. You get little in return except another pile of bones for your soup and another warning that you are needed, always needed. The women come too. They bring you requests for baby slings, medicine pouches, finely worked thongs for sewing. Sometimes, in the depth of winter, a mother will bring you her child's cracked shoes, eyes pleading, asking for help you cannot refuse. You patch and sew, even when your fingers bleed. If you do not, you are cold hearted. If you do, you are invisible again as soon as the problem is solved. No one asks how your own feet feel, how your own children fare. Even the children need you. They want toys, little balls of stitched scrap, small bags for marbles, headbands to keep out the wind. They are not demanding in the way adults are, but you feel their need all the same. You try to oblige when you can, because you remember being small and wanting things too. Sometimes you think that if you had just one less request, just one less pair of eyes looking your way, you might have room to breathe. When someone in the camp is sick or old, you are there as well. They need soft leather for wrappings, padded mats for sore backs, headbands to keep sweat from their eyes. The healer needs pouches for herbs, bands for splints, soft skins for bedding. No matter how poor your own health, how little you have, you find a way to scrape together something for them. Because not doing so is unthinkable, and because need is the only currency that never loses value. In the middle of all this, your own needs are invisible. You owe everyone, but no one owes you. When you ask for a favor, you find yourself at the end of the line. When you need food, there is only a scrap. When you need help hauling a heavy rack of skins, you do it yourself, feeling every vertebra in your back grind and pop. When you are sick, the world simply waits for you to heal and return to your work. Some nights you wonder if you could refuse, if you could simply stop. Let the hides rot, let the straps break, let the pouches leak, and the shoes wear through. You imagine the camp brought to a standstill, forced to notice how much they rely on you. But the thought does not last. You know what would really happen: anger, blame, and eventually someone else forced to take your place, enduring what you have endured. You are bound, not by respect or gratitude, but by necessity. The camp does not care how you feel, only that the next piece of leather is ready on time. You are as much a tool as the knife or the scraper, valued only so long as you are useful. You do your work, you patch and sew and mend, and you disappear when the job is done. You are always working for others, never for yourself. It is a kind of slavery, this interdependence, one built on need instead of chains, on expectation instead of kindness. You look at your hands, cracked and calloused, and realize you cannot remember the last time you made something just for yourself. Your labor is your only currency, and you spend it until nothing is left. But tomorrow, someone will need you again, and you will answer, because that is the only way anyone remembers you exist at all. It is said that tanners do not die of old age. They are eaten alive, slowly, by their own work. You know the truth of it in your bones, your skin, your lungs. There is poison in every breath you take, in every scrape, every drop of lye, every hour spent hunched over smoking pits and stinking water. Your body is a battlefield, and sickness is the only true inheritance of the tanner. The smoke is the first enemy. It worms its way into your chest, coating your lungs with bitterness, leaving you with a cough that never goes away. Some days it is dry and sharp, making your ribs ache. Other days it is wet, heavy, rattling, as if something inside you is trying to claw its way out. You spit into the dirt and see blood, but you keep working. There is no time to rest, no medicine strong enough to fight smoke and rot together. Your eyes are always watering, red rimmed, stinging. You try to blink away the irritation, but it only grows worse with every hour near the fire. At night, you rub your eyes and smear the sting across your cheeks. Sleep does nothing to soothe it. You wake up with crusts at the corners of your eyes, blinking into another morning of grit and haze. The lie is worse. It is never satisfied with eating away just the fat and hair from hides. It wants your skin, too. Every cut is a doorway for the poison. Blisters swell, then burst, leaving raw, weeping patches that throb with pain and burn when you so much as look at them. Sometimes the wounds refuse to close. Your hands stay red and puffy, your fingers swollen, the joints stiff and uncooperative. You wrap them with scraps of leather, but the leather is rough and the pain seeps through anyway. Rot finds a way into your wounds, always. Even the tiniest nick can fester overnight, growing hot and swollen, filled with pus and fear. You try to clean the cuts in the stream, but the water is never really clean, not after so many hides and so much filth. Sometimes you see the old tanner's missing fingers, or with hands twisted and blackened, and you know you are only a few accidents on from joining them. Gangrene is not just a word to you, it is a daily threat. The worst is the fever. It comes when you least expect it, often after a long day of soaking hides or breathing in the sickly sweet smell of rot. Your skin grows hot, your mouth dry, your thoughts tangled and wild. You shake with chills, sweat soaking your bedding, unable to move except to shiver. In those moments, you do not dream of anything except water and the pain in your bones. Sometimes you recover, slowly, with more weakness and less will than before. Sometimes you do not recover at all. People disappear and no one talks about them. You learn not to ask. Your stomach is a constant source of trouble. You eat food laced with bits of old hide, ash, grit, and whatever else finds its way into your hands. You drink water that tastes of iron and old fat. Sometimes you cannot keep anything down. Other times you feel cramps twisting your insides, sending you running for the bushes, sweating and groaning. You know that sooner or later you will lose enough strength to keep working. But until that day, you force yourself to eat and drink, no matter how it burns. You watch your friends and neighbors, and you see the signs. The tanners are always coughing, always limping, always wrapped in rags, hands bandaged and eyes downcast. The older ones stoop, their backs curved, their faces lined not with wisdom, but with pain. The youngest start strong and hopeful, but soon enough, their fingers swell, their skin cracks, and they learn to keep quiet about the things that hurt. You know that you look just the same, a living warning. Sometimes there are outbreaks in the camp. Sickness sweeps through, and people whisper about curses, about angry spirits and bad omens. You know the truth, even if they will not say it out loud. The poison is not in the spirits, but in the work itself, in the water, in the smoke, in the hides. You carry it everywhere you go, and you pass it to everyone you love. There is no cure. The healer can offer herbs, but nothing takes away the pain for long. The only advice is to stop working, but that is not an option. If you stop, you starve. If you keep going, you suffer. It is a choice between poison and hunger, and you choose poison because it is slower. Some days you wonder if you could have been something else, a hunter, a warrior, even a gatherer, but you know the truth. Every job brings its own pain. Yours is just dirtier, uglier, and harder to hide. You scrub at your wounds, swallow back your coughs, and keep working, because sickness is just another part of the life you never chose. You are a tanner, and poison is the price you pay for every breath, every scrap of leather, every day that you survive. Once, a long time ago, you might have believed in something like pride. Maybe you even listened to the old ones when they said, "Put your soul into your work, and it will return the favor." You tried in those early years. You remembered the songs they hummed while working, the careful words offered to the spirits of animals, the small tokens tied to finished hides as a kind of thanks or prayer. But the years have taken all of that from you, layer by layer, just as surely as the lie has stripped away the feeling from your hands. Now, when people tell you to work with your soul, you want to laugh or maybe scream. You have no soul left. Not really. If you ever did, you scraped it off along with the fat and the hair. Every time you dip your hands into another pit of rot, every time you swallow another lungful of bitter smoke, a piece of you dissolves, washes away, and does not come back. It is not that you do not care about your work. In some ways, you care too much. You care because every mistake means more pain, more blame, more hungry nights and angry stares. You care because you have no choice, but you have learned that there is nothing spiritual about desperation. There is no beauty in the way your hands move, only habit and exhaustion. You no longer talk to the spirits, no longer offer prayers. If there are gods or ancestors watching, you hope they look away. The rituals that used to mark your days are now just motions. You cut, scrape, soak, dry, smoke over and over, never stopping, never thinking. The rhythm is a kind of comfort, or maybe a sedative. You feel nothing except the weight of your own body, the dull ache in your bones, and the cold certainty that tomorrow will be the same. The only song you hum is a bitter one, words lost to your own resentment. You watch the others in the camp, and you see how they still have pieces of their soul left to spend. The hunters swagger and sing even when the hunt is bad. The women tell stories as they weave, laughing at small things you no longer find funny. Children run and shout, filling the air with the kind of hope you cannot remember having. You sit at the edge of the firelight, silent, rubbing your hands together, pretending to listen while your mind wanders somewhere dark and quiet. Sometimes you try to remember what it felt like to care about the craft for its own sake. You remember the first time you made something that did not fall apart, how you showed it off, how someone clapped you on the shoulder and said, Now you are truly a tanner. You thought it meant something then. Now you know better. It meant only that you had begun the long journey of becoming less than you were. You make things with your hands, but nothing with your heart. You patch and mend and twist and stretch, but you do not create, at least, not in any way that matters. The hides you finish are good enough, sometimes even better than that, but they are empty things. They carry the mark of your labor, your suffering, your lost hours, but nothing of your spirit. It is not just the work that drains you, it is the endless need, the constant demands, the way the camp pulls at you from all sides and never gives anything back. It is the knowledge that you could die tomorrow and no one would remember which shoes or bags were yours, only that they worked or did not. You are as replaceable as the tools you use, as disposable as the scraps you throw to the dogs. Every so often, someone thanks you, not with words, but with a nod, a look, a moment of brief understanding. It is not enough. You try to feel gratitude, to let it warm the place where your soul used to be, but the feeling slips away, lost among the smoke and the mud and the endless repetition. You wonder if the soul can ever be regained. If there is a life after this, maybe it will be somewhere far from hides and scraping stones and the bite of lie. Maybe there you will find the missing pieces. Until then, you keep working because the work is all you have left, and even an empty shell can still hold a knife. In the end, your hands move not because you want them to, but because they must. Your heart beats, your lungs fill with smoke, and your soul, whatever is left of it, clings to your body out of stubbornness, not hope. You work with what remains because there is nothing else to do. Winter is not just a change of season, it is a tightening of the noose, a slow, suffocating descent into new and deeper layers of misery. For a tanner, the cold months are not a time of rest. They are a siege, your body against the world, your will against the elements, your hope against the facts of ice and wind and endless gray. The cold is the first enemy. It seeps into your bones before the sun even rises. You wake up wrapped in every scrap of hide and fur you possess, and still you shiver. Your shelter groans with frost, the walls growing brittle and thin, leaking drafts that find every gap. Even before you start work, your hands are stiff, the skin already beginning to crack. You rub them together, blowing on your knuckles, but your breath turns to steam and your fingers remain numb. The hides do not care about your suffering. In winter, everything takes twice as long and hurts twice as much. The water for soaking turns to ice if you do not keep a constant fire burning, and there is never enough wood. You break through frozen crusts with numb hands, scraping away frost before you can even think about the real work. Sometimes, when the cold is at its worst, you use your own body heat, pressing hides against your chest, under your arms, anywhere you can, to keep them from freezing solid. Your tools betray you. The knife handle becomes as cold as the blade. Stones crack from sudden temperature changes. Scrapers chip and splinter, sending sharp pieces flying into your face. The cords and ropes you use to stretch hides become stiff as iron, impossible to knot or tie. Your breath fogs in the air, and sometimes you catch yourself just staring at it, mesmerized, wishing for a day when all you had to worry about was keeping warm. The smoke from your fire does not behave in winter. It hugs the ground, creeping through the camp, filling every tent and lodge with its acrid scent. The children cough, the elders complain, and you are always the first to be blamed. Even your own lungs feel the difference. The cold sharpens the bite of smoke, making every breath a contest between air and pain. You try to cough quietly, but there is no hiding the sound in the frozen stillness. Your body pays the price for every mistake. Blisters that would heal in summer now fester for weeks. Cuts turn blue at the edges, threatening to rot. Your joints swell and stiffen. Your teeth ache with the cold, and sometimes you swear your bones themselves are freezing from the inside out. Sleep offers no relief. Your dreams are of ice and endless scraping, of waking to find your hands locked into claws, unable to move. Food grows scarce. Whatever you manage to store during the warmer months quickly disappears. You chew dried meat that tastes like leather, gnaw on frozen roots, boil bones into thin, bitter broth. Some days, hunger gnaws at you harder than the cold. You trade more and more of your precious leather for scraps of food, always getting less in return, always bargaining from weakness. The worst part is how time itself slows down. Days blend into one another, an endless procession of gray skies and numb limbs. There is no hope for change. The sun barely rises before it disappears again, leaving you in darkness that feels eternal. Even the camp grows quieter, as if everyone is waiting for something to break. The weather, the hunger, the spirit of someone who cannot take it anymore. Children cry more in winter, their faces red and chapped, their feet always cold. The elders retreat into themselves, grumbling and silent, staring at nothing. You move through it all in a kind of trance, performing your duties by rote, your mind dulled by cold and fatigue. Every small task feels monumental, every failure a disaster. And yet, the work never stops. If anything, it grows more urgent. The camp needs more hides for clothing, for bedding, for patching up wind-blown shelters. If you fall behind, the consequences are immediate and harsh. Nobody cares that your hands are bleeding, that your tools are breaking, that your heart is somewhere far away, hidden under a drift of snow. There are moments, brief, flickering moments, when you almost believe you will survive. When the fire burns just right, when you find a hidden stash of dry wood, when the hides dry soft instead of stiff. But these moments are as rare as sunlight in winter, and they disappear just as quickly. In the end, winter teaches you the real meaning of hopelessness. It strips away everything: comfort, rest, pride, even memory. All that remains is the work, the cold, and the knowledge that spring, when it comes, will only bring another round of the same endless struggle. Until then, you grit your teeth, wrap your aching body in another patch of leather, and wait for the thaw. If there is one thing that never changes in your world, it is the presence of children underfoot. Your own, your neighbors, the camp's next generation of laborers and sufferers. Childhood for a tanner's child is not the soft, storybook dream that outsiders might imagine. There are no lazy afternoons, no time to wander and dream, no gentle hands shielding little eyes from harsh truths. For the tanner's children, growing up means learning early that their small bodies are just another set of tools in a world that runs on work. They start by watching. At first, they lurk at the edges, wide eyed and silent, sniffing the air like nervous pups, unsure if they are more afraid of the stench or the scolding. But curiosity is stronger than fear. Before long, they draw closer, poking sticks at the soaking pits, prodding half dried hides, wrinkling their noses, but asking 100 questions. Why does it smell so bad? Why are your hands red? Why does nobody else do this? You give them the same answers your parents gave you, half truths and bitter jokes. Because the spirits hate us, you say, because someone has to do the work. They laugh, not understanding, but soon enough they will learn. Small tasks are given first. Carry this bucket, drag that scrap to the fire, rub this spot with a stone. The little ones try to help, but their hands are soft, their attention short. They drop things, slip in the muck, sometimes end up crying when the smoke gets in their eyes or a cut starts to bleed. You clean their wounds if you have the time, and you try not to let your frustration show. If they do not learn now, the work will only be harder later. By the time they can walk without stumbling, the children are already part of the daily routine. They help stretch hides, hammer in pegs, chase away dogs and birds. You do not have the luxury of letting them grow up slow. Every pair of hands matters, no matter how small. The older children learn to scrape, to tie knots, to patch holes. They squabble and compete, each trying to prove they are tougher, faster, more useful than the others. School is the pit, the rack, the fire. Education is in every blister, every split nail, every lesson learned when a careless moment ruins a whole hide. Mistakes are punished not with words, but with extra chores, with hunger, with a long, silent stare from you. The children learn quickly, or they suffer until they do. There is no time for play. Toys, if they exist at all, are cast off scraps of leather twisted into balls or dolls. The games they invent are copies of your own movements. Who can scrape the fastest? Who can tie the tightest knot? Who can carry the most wood? Sometimes you catch them pretending to be the hunters or warriors they see in camp, but the pretense always fades when you call them back to work. Their bodies change as the work claims them. The skin on their hands grows thick and tough before they are 10 years old. Their backs begin to bend, their eyes squint against the smoke. The cough that will haunt them for life starts early, the ache in their wrists and shoulders following close behind. You watch them and see your own future written on their faces, a future of toil, pain, and invisible gratitude. Sometimes you feel a flicker of guilt, wondering if you are robbing them of something precious, some childhood magic you barely remember. But guilt is a luxury you cannot afford. The camp does not run on kindness. The world does not slow down for your regrets. You do what must be done. You teach them how to survive, how to work, how to bear the endless, thankless burden that is their inheritance. Other children in the camp see the tanner's brood and wrinkle their noses, echoing the scorn they hear from their elders. The stink of the work is a brand that no child can hide. Your children learn to ignore the comments, to keep their heads down, to find pride where they can, in a well scraped hide, a fire that burns true, a day without blisters. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, you wonder what would happen if you could give your children another life, one where their hands were clean, their backs unbowed, their dreams still their own. But dawn always comes, and with it, another day of labor. Your children wake beside you, ready to work, their faces set in the same hard lines as your own. They are the workforce of tomorrow, and tomorrow comes too soon. There are moments, fleeting and dangerous, when you let yourself imagine what it would be like to live another life. The thought creeps in quietly, often at the end of a brutal day, when your hands are so numb you can barely feel them, or in the slow hours before dawn, when the world is quiet except for your own breathing. It is not a luxury you allow yourself often, because hope is a slippery thing. Too much of it, and you lose your grip on the only reality you know, the stink of hides, the burn of lie, the relentless, bone deep ache of your body. Still, dreams come. Sometimes you imagine yourself as a hunter, moving silently through the trees, the wind clean in your face, your only worry the next step, the next trail, the next chance to prove yourself. In your dream, your hands are steady and sure, your eyes clear and bright, your back unburdened. No one calls your name for scraps or sends you scurrying to mend what others have broken. You are the hero, the provider, the one sung about at feasts. Other times, you dream of being a healer, wise and respected, tending wounds with gentle fingers and kind words, not scraping rot from the world's cast offs. You imagine people coming to you with offerings, grateful for your help, looking at you as something more than just a tool. Your shelter is warm, your fire burns clean, and the only smells are of herbs and sweet smoke. Even the life of a simple gatherer has its appeal. You picture yourself moving through sunlit meadows, basket in hand, searching for berries or roots. The work is still hard, but the rhythm is gentler, the dangers fewer, the pain not so constant. You imagine laughter in the fields, shared stories, a sense that what you do will not haunt your bones for the rest of your days. Sometimes you let your mind wander even further. What if you lived in another village, one where leatherwork was praised, where people took turns at the worst jobs, where nobody spent their entire life scraping, soaking, and stinking for the sake of others? What if you had been born somewhere else entirely, into a world with soft beds, warm food, and hands that never had to bleed for their supper? You know these places probably do not exist, but you dream of them anyway, tracing the lines of their possibility as you drift toward sleep. These dreams are a dangerous comfort. If you linger too long in them, the bitterness creeps in. You remember every moment you tried to escape your fate and were pulled back by necessity. Every time you hesitated, the work doubled. Every time you asked for more, you got less. Every time you dared to hope, something else was taken from you: a tool, a meal, a sliver of dignity. You try not to let anyone see you dreaming. If the other tanners catch you staring into the distance, they make jokes or throw sharp words, reminders that daydreams are a luxury no one in your position can afford. Even your children learn quickly not to talk about what they might become. It is better to have no dreams at all than to see them spoiled by the reality waiting just outside your shelter. The hardest moments are when your children ask, "Could I be a hunter? Could I be a singer? Could I be anything but this?" You want to say yes. You want to tell them that hard work leads somewhere, that suffering is not the only road they have to walk. But you know the truth. The camp needs what it needs, and you are what you are: a tanner and nothing else. Sometimes, though, late at night, you whisper stories to yourself. Stories where the tanner becomes a hero, where the smell of smoke fades, and where hands that have known nothing but labor finally find rest. You know these stories are not true, but for a moment, they are enough. They remind you that you are still human, still capable of wanting something more, even if you will never have it. In the end, you wake up. You flex your hands, feel the ache in your bones, and smell the familiar stink. The dream slips away like water through your fingers, leaving you with nothing but the cold comfort of reality. Another day waits, another hide, another scrape, another round of endless, thankless work. You bury your dreams deep. You cannot afford to carry them where others might see, but they are there, waiting in the dark, flickering like the last coals in a dying fire. There are days, more often now, when you catch yourself moving slower than you mean to, your hands shaking as you reach for a knife, your eyes squinting at the fine lines of a cracked hide. You did not notice the years piling up at first. They came one after another, each one a little heavier, a little darker, until now, when you wake in the dimness and wonder how long it has been since you last felt truly strong. Old age is not a reward in this trade. It is not a badge of honor, not a seat at the council fire, not a gentle rest. If you are lucky or unlucky enough to reach it, old age is simply another layer of trouble. Your hands, so long the tools of your survival, betray you first. The joints swell, the fingers curl in on themselves, the skin splitting in deep, purple cracks that do not heal. You wrap them in scraps of soft leather, but it does little. The pain is always there, a background song that will not be silenced. Your eyes are not what they were. Years of smoke, grit, and squinting at half light have left your vision cloudy and uncertain. Sometimes you mistake a shadow for a hole in the hide, or cut where you should sew. There are no spectacles in your world, no kindly healers with clever cures for blindness. You simply do your best, learning to trust your fingers even as they stiffen and forget their own strength. Your back, once strong enough to haul a rack of wet skins without complaint, is now a twisted column of aches and spasms. You cannot stand for long, cannot sit for long, cannot sleep for long without waking to some new complaint. You move with the caution of someone who has learned the world will hurt you just for moving. Every morning, it takes longer to work out the stiffness, longer to shake the cold from your bones. But the worst is not the pain, it is the silence that comes with age. The camp moves on around you, the younger tanners elbowing past, eager to prove themselves, to win the tiny scraps of approval that you once chased. The warriors, the hunters, the mothers, they bring you fewer things to mend, fewer hides to tan. They say you have earned your rest, but what they mean is that your work is not needed as much as it once was. You sit at the edge of things, half invisible, half forgotten. Your children, if you have them, are grown now. They do their own work, bear their own scars, and sometimes look at you with a mix of pity and fear. You see the future in their eyes, the same future you inherited, the same worn path. You want to warn them, to tell them to get out, to run, to dream, but you know the world will catch them just as it caught you. You try to pass on what little you know, tricks for softening a hide, for making a scrap of leather last through another winter, for keeping a wound clean enough to heal. Some listen, most do not. They believe, as you once did, that their strength will last forever. You do not waste your breath. They will learn soon enough. You feel the cold more now. The fire does not reach your bones the way it used to. The winter winds cut deeper. The dampness settles in your joints and refuses to leave. Sleep becomes a thin, broken thing, scattered by aches and coughing fits. You dream sometimes of warmer places, of softer work, of hands that do not hurt every time you move. Once, people came to you for advice, for stories, for a bit of laughter in the long evenings. Now, you are a shadow in the corner, spoken to when needed, ignored the rest of the time. It is not cruelty, it is simply the way of things. The camp values only what it can use, and you are not as useful as you once were. Still, you find small comforts. A quiet evening by the fire, the way the smoke curls just so, the rare smile of a grandchild, the warmth of a dog sleeping at your feet. You learn to measure happiness in moments, not in achievements. You survive by accepting your own smallness, your own fading place in a world that moves on without you. You wonder, sometimes, what comes after this? If there is anything left for a tanner when the work is done, when the hands can no longer grip the knife, when the eyes cannot see the seams. You hope there is peace, or at least a kind of forgetting. Until then, you sit with your memories, good and bad, and wait for the last inevitable release. You are the old tanner now, a living lesson, a silent warning, a relic kept for the sake of tradition and pity. The world goes on, and you watch it, knowing that even your shadow will not last forever. When you are finally gone, it does not happen with ceremony or song. The camp does not gather to remember your stories or to recount your years of labor. The work of a tanner, by its very nature, slips quietly into oblivion, drowned out by the daily business of surviving. Perhaps, when you die, a few notice that the fire in your lean to has gone cold, or that the morning does not ring with your habitual cough. But soon enough, your absence becomes just another part of the background, as invisible as your presence once was. Your tools, battered and worn, are claimed by another, maybe a child or a distant cousin, someone desperate, someone unlucky, someone who could not avoid inheriting your burden. They pick over your knives and stones, cursing the cracks and nicks you left behind. Maybe they find one old trick of yours, how to split a stubborn hide, how to coax a fire from damp wood, but mostly your skills dissolve with you, scattered like dust into the wind. Your shelter, patched and repatched, sags a little lower. The hides you left drying in the cold wind are quickly claimed, worked, or tossed aside. Within a week, there is no sign you ever lived there, save for the faint, persistent stench of old leather and smoke. If someone mentions you at all, it is in passing, a reminder to stretch a skin tighter or to keep the dogs away from the soaking pit. No one recalls your laughter, your private curses, your nights spent mending until your fingers bled. For the camp, life continues as it always has. The children still squabble, the fires still burn, the hungry still eat whatever they can barter or steal. If anyone remembers you, it is only when a pouch bursts, a shoe splits, a strap breaks. Then your name might slip into conversation. The old tanner used to make better ones, or at least it did not stink like last year's batch. But even these small moments fade, replaced by new worries, new needs. Sometimes you wonder what is left of you out there in the world. Maybe a few of your hides survive, patched onto a water bag or stretched into the roof of a shelter. They carry no memory of your hands, no mark of your spirit. The things you made were always meant to be used up and discarded, replaced without fanfare or regret. You spent your life fighting against rot, against time, against the relentless erosion of usefulness. In the end, even your own memory proves as fragile as a poorly smoked hide. You do not expect to be mourned. You knew long ago that the work of a tanner is thankless. If there is any sadness, it comes from the knowledge that you are not alone in this oblivion. The others who came before you, your parents, your grandparents, all the tanners stretching back into the shadowy past, are gone in just the same way. No songs, no names, only the work, the stink, the scars left on hands and hearts. Some say the spirit lingers, that your ghost might haunt the soaking pit or wander the edge of camp, searching for something lost. But you know better. The only eternity here is the one that comes from being forgotten. You vanish as completely as smoke on the wind. What remains is darkness, unmarked, undisturbed, the kind of silence that swallows up everything. Your life, your pain, your effort, all sink into that eternal night. There is no justice in it, no balance. The universe does not remember the hands that worked or the hearts that broke. It keeps no record of suffering or sacrifice. There is only the emptiness that follows, and the faint hope that the burden will pass a little lighter to the next unlucky soul. For a moment, perhaps, someone will pause by your old shelter. They might wonder what sort of person once lived and worked there. They might pick up a battered knife, test its edge, and think of all the days and nights it saw. Then they move on. The world does not stop. The dogs still howl. The fires still burn. The hides still stink. Oblivion swallows your memory, and the darkness closes in behind. If there is a legacy at all, it is this lesson. Life goes on, uncaring, unmarked by your passage. The only thing that lasts is the work, the endless, grinding, thankless work, and the darkness that follows when you are no longer there to do it. So you have reached the end of the day, the end of the work, the end of yourself. You look back, not because there is any reward for doing so, but because the weight of your life is heavy, and sometimes it is all you can do to count the scars left behind. There is no triumph here. No song is sung for the tanner. The world does not pause to reckon with your suffering. But in these last cold moments, you try to tally what was gained and what was lost. You have lived a life of endless repetition. Morning after morning, you crawled from your shelter, already exhausted, already aching, already dreading the work that lay ahead. You did what was necessary, never what was wanted. You scraped hides, you boiled bones, you choked on smoke and stench and the judgment of your neighbors. Every day was a test not of skill or courage, but of endurance. You passed only because you had no other choice. You look at your hands, twisted and cracked, and wonder how many lives they built for others, how many moccasins shaped, how many water bags sewn, how many bits of tough, misshapen leather you forced into usefulness. There was never praise, only the next demand, the next complaint, the next reminder that your best was only good enough until it failed. The only recognition you earned was silence, the absence of your name in the mouths of the hungry and the cold. Every year blurred into the next. You measured time by the hides, by the seasons, by the slow crumbling of your own body. Childhood vanished beneath work. Old age crept in long before your hair turned white. Joy was fleeting, a quick joke by the fire, a scrap of food saved for a child, a moment's rest when the camp was quiet and the sky wide and clear. Mostly, there was fatigue. Mostly, there was pain. You tried to dream. You let your mind wander to lives you could never have, to comforts forever out of reach. But the world was always there to drag you back. Another hide to scrape, another fire to feed, another pair of hands held out, needing what you alone could provide. Hope was a distant spark, quickly smothered. Resentment burned longer, but even that faded as the years wore you down. In the end, you see the truth. You were never meant to be a hero. The world does not remember Tanners. It remembers warriors and chiefs, hunters and healers, mothers who sing their children to sleep. It remembers stories of glory and victory, not stories of smoke and sores and stubbornness. The work you did was necessary, but necessity is not the same as value. You became invisible by being indispensable. You taught your children what you could, knowing that the best gift you had to give was survival, not happiness. You watched them grow hard and silent, watched the world lay the same burdens on their backs. You warned them, in the small, tired ways you knew, that hope could be as dangerous as hunger. You watched them inherit the cycle, and you loved them as best you could. Now, as you vanish into the same darkness that claimed all the Tanners before you, you realize there is no grand reckoning. No scales balance your suffering against your usefulness. No spirit comes to gather the scraps of your soul and make them whole again. There is only this final understanding. Your life was a chain of dirty, painful, necessary days, each indistinguishable from the last. If there is any lesson to pass on, it is not a story of triumph or wisdom. It is the truth that most lives are spent in the shadow of someone else's story, that most work is unthanked, and most suffering unnoticed. The world needs its Tanners, but it does not want to remember them. You close your eyes. The smell of smoke, of rot, of leather and toil fades at last. In the silence, you realize you are not afraid. There is nothing left to fear because there is nothing left at all. You have given everything. You have become a part of the endless, thankless machinery of survival. The final tally: one life spent in service, lost to darkness, forgotten by all except the next hand to pick up the knife. This, at last, is the story of the Tanner.